Hello and welcome to the Say It Sister podcast. I'm Lucy and
I'm Karen, and we're thrilled to have you here. Our paths crossed years ago on a shared journey of self-discovery, and what we found was an unshakable bond and a mutual desire to help others heal and live their very best lives.
For years we've had open, honest and courageous conversations, discussions that challenged us, lifted us and sometimes even brought us to tears. Now we want to share those conversations with you. We believe that by letting you into our world, you might find the courage to use your voice and say what really needs to be said in your own life.
Whether you're a woman seeking empowerment, a self-improvement enthusiast, or someone who craves thought-provoking dialogue, join us as we promise to bring you real, unfiltered conversations that encourage self-reflection and growth.
So join us as we explore, question and grow together. It's time to say it, sister.
Welcome to Say It Sister, the space where women's voices rise, experiences shine, and sisterhood leads the way. Today we're talking about one of our favourite coaching topics, peak life experiences. Those moments when you are changed forever by an experience that's planned or maybe even unplanned, something that comes from the left field often. They can be amazing experiences like travelling the world or giving birth, or even deeply challenging and scary times. Moments like sexual assault, losing a job, a relationship, or a loved one. But either way, there is no going back. And you know that whatever has happened was part of some master plan of change and evolution. I'm remembering the moment my daughter was born. After a traumatic 2-day labour, Catalina arrived in silence. She didn't cry. It just had these like black eyes. They're not black now, but obviously when babies are born, their eyes are really dark. These dark, sort of beady eyes staring at me in total silence. And it was a profound moment and one that has stayed with me and my husband. And we talk about it a lot. You know, you see the shots on films and there's always a baby crying when it's born. And she was the opposite to that. But before we dive in and go even deeper, we want to bring you, the listeners, into our conversation today. And I'm inviting you to think about a moment when you felt completely alive. Where were you? Who were you? And what were you feeling? What's the impact of this memory on you right now? And just take a moment here. Whatever is coming up, it's the right thing to think about. Lucy, hi, welcome back. Thanks for inspiring this episode. I know you have lots to say. Fill us in on this life-changing trip of yours to Costa Rica. Can you describe your peak moment vividly? The sights, the sounds, and the emotions. Give it to us.
Oh, it was life-changing. And I think I went there with this feeling that it was going to be life-changing. So I went there with an attitude of, fill me up, let me experience everything and take the learning. And the sights and the sounds were just phenomenal. So we started off in the capital city, San Jose, which is a typical, near the equator, hustle and bustle, quite run down, vibrant kind of city. So there was lots of colour, there was lots of action, there was loads of movement, music, and lots of buskers, lots of beggars, lots of everything. So that was a bit of a shock to the senses, and we were all quite pleased to leave that behind. And then we ventured into the rainforest, or an area called La Fortuna, which is near, basically centred around the Arena volcano. And so this is an active volcano still, and I think it last erupted in 2010. And so you could see the ash and the smoke all coming around it. It was magnificent. And of course, being in the rainforest, there were constant sounds and sights. And one of the peak experiences, it was quite ironic. We'd gone off for a trip for a sloth trail because I said the only thing, I need to do or see before I leave is a sloth in the wild. So we went on this trail, and they live really high in the trees, and so you could see them with binoculars, but you didn't really have that. Excuse me, I've come back with a cough as well. But yeah, you didn't really feel that connection with them. So it was like, oh, I'm just looking through a camera almost. Anyway, we came away. I was satisfied I could tick it off the list. And anyway, we got back to the hostel and everyone was gathered round a tree. And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, there's a sloth in the tree. And it literally, well, apparently they come down once a week to poo. And so that's obviously what
Oh
it
my
had come
God.
to do. And yeah, it descended to the ground, and I was literally a meter away from it. I could see everything, its
Oh,
face, its movements. And actually, they move quite quick. It's just when they don't need to move, they just don't.
I
And
like
then
that.
we noticed that there was another one, and so its mate had come and joined it. So there were two. It was just phenomenal. And so
Wow.
that was one of the peak experiences, because it was something I wanted so much, and I've been disappointed. And then, just as like the universe would say, right, here you go, Lucy, here's a gift for you. It was just amazing. And I could feel the joy come from my toes all the way up to my heart, and the biggest smile came on my face. I didn't need to speak to anybody or do anything. I just felt, let all the feelings come through, and it was beautiful. But the day after was my true peak experience, the one that will be etched into my mind forever. And we went horse riding, and they were American style saddles where you hold on at the front and just have the reins in one hand. And I felt like a proper cowgirl. I felt really powerful, but in tune with this beautiful creature. His name was Scorpion, and yeah, he was magnificent. And we did a bit of a trail, and then at the end of it, they took us up this hill, because at the top of the hill they'd arranged for us to have melon and pineapple and some water. And we dismounted the horses and just looked round, and there in front of us was a full view in all its glory of this volcano. There was not a cloud in the sky,
Wow.
there was no breeze, and then to the right of me, which was probably about 10 meters in front of me, was a beautiful tree that kind of like arched or framed the view. And there were four little white faced monkeys just being joyful, playing and just mucking around and being silly and daft. And it was almost like they'd come out for the cameras. And I just stood there with this beautiful watermelon, um, hearing the sights, the sounds, with this most majestic view. And it was almost like it was so beautiful, it couldn't be real. And it was that moment where I was like, I am here. I
Mhm.
made this happen. I said yes to this, and it was just beautiful. So lots of other things happened every day. There was these peak experiences, but that was the one where I just felt completely at peace.
Love that. And I love, I mean, I am here is one of my phrases that I say to myself when I need to kind of come back into my heart. So I love that you said that, because it just reminded me of that. Like, I literally, when my mind is whirring, I'll go, I am here in my heart. And I just pull myself back in and I come back to the moment. So yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, because it is so important, isn't it, for us to stay present in the moments. We lose ourselves so quickly, and yet we can come back in very, very simply with some words or a memory. It sounds like, yeah, I could feel a lot of energy in my body as you were talking, and like, waves of sort of like almost like air around me as well, as I was like, oh, I'm feeling that, and I could see it as well. So thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you're back.
Well, I'm still processing lots, because I've only been back in the UK probably 3 days now, and I keep getting these new memories or seeing new bits of wisdom attached to these different memories, and uh, and so I'm sure as we talk, and over coming weeks, I'll get more wisdom, and I'll be like, oh, and I've had this other memory, so I'll keep bringing that to you. But I want to ask you the same question. What about your peak experience?
Oh, I've had so many in my life, but I think I'm going to stick with the pregnancy story, because I know so many women, so many of us have babies, that so many women don't have babies, and there are women who can't have babies, and all of that. So I think I'll stay with that, because it's a theme for me. Um, my journey to getting pregnant was not easy. It took us a long, long time, and it was late on. So I had Catalina when I was 43. So you think about the challenges of that. It was actually a lot, and we've been trying and trying and trying, and it was a massive journey for me. Like, ultimately, we didn't just go, oh, let's have a baby and get pregnant. And I know so many people have that experience, but ours was not like that.
Yeah,
But what
mine was, and you completely take it for granted. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and we all have our own journeys, don't we, and our own experiences to have, and the ups and the downs. as a woman later in life who also coaches a lot of women. A lot of women come to me and have similar things, or they've not been able to do it. They've tried so many rounds of IVF. They're later on in life now and they've kind of given up. So there's that side of it as well. So the fact that I did get pregnant eventually is also a great gift for me. So there's so many, that journey of like the conception or trying to get pregnant to conceiving. I feel like I could write a whole book just around the journey for me of motherhood. And I probably will at some point, because it was not an easy journey. And it was like, the ups and downs of trying, later in life, is it really going to happen for me? It's all I ever really wanted in life, to be honest. As a little girl, I had a vision of having a family, and I'm an only child, so it was quite important for me. But I tried lots of different things to meet the right person to do it with, but it just never worked out for me until I met my husband. So that was huge. And it was like, I felt like the journey for me was really about reconnecting back in with my body as a woman. I did a lot of work around my womb. I would go to womb yoga. I had I worked with somebody individually on that as well, like helping me to connect into my body. I had womb massages. I did a detox with the Ayurveda. I had symbols. I was reading books, spiritual books as well, about calling in, the baby that I wanted to have and all of that. I mean, I did, I dedicated like 2 years of my life to this journey and didn't know if it was going to happen. And also we were going to do this. And I had to not do the IVF because I was going to countries where the Zika virus was. You remember the Zika virus? So it was really strange, even to the point where they gave me the stuff to inject, the medication. And she said, "Oh, where are you going again?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to India." No, where was I going? I was supposed to go to Belize, I think. And she said, "Oh, you can't go there because it's got Zika. You can't do IVF if you're going there." I was like, right. So there was all of this that was like ups, the downs. So actually getting pregnant, when it finally happened and I looked at the pregnancy test, I felt like everything stopped. It was like, I've actually got tears in my eyes. I remember I kept being sick. And my dad said to me, "Have you done a pregnancy test?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not pregnant. There's no way I'm pregnant." I just sort of like in my brain thought it's never going to happen. Went to the toilet, got Rich to get a pregnancy test, did the test, and it was like the faintest little line. And I just thought, oh my God. And I showed Rich and he went, "Oh, there's hardly anything there." And I went, "There is a line." So then he went and got another test. So I must have done about 4 tests. And I remember I actually just sat on the floor of the bathroom and just was like, it was like, it's almost like I could hear like angels singing. Like it was one of those moments, like, one of those. And I just couldn't believe it. And it was like, it just stopped everything for me. It changed everything. It stopped everything.
I've got to say, it is quite remarkable that for most of us women, the most amazing peak experience happens in the bathroom.
It's very true. I don't want to be, part of me is going, oh, there's a part of me that's nervous to talk about it in a way, because it's almost like, oh, women going to, like, when I think about women and like we're here to have babies and the programming, there is that story that comes up for me where I go, I don't want to fall into that. However, I knew that I always just knew instinctively that I wanted to be a mom, and I know a lot of women don't have that. But I did have it. And so when it happened for me, after all the sort of struggles, I was like, I just couldn't believe it. It was like, it was a shock, but a beautiful shock. And obviously the pregnancy wasn't easy either. So there was just there's a lot that happened in that space. And for me, the idea of stepping into the motherhood archetype has helped me to feel more like a woman, for myself, because I have to mother myself, and take care of myself, not just my child. That's become stronger because I've realized how dependent she is on me. So
are they the biggest lessons that you've learned from that?
The biggest lessons, everyone talks about it, like you have to put your oxygen mask on first. I haven't done that all the time. There's been so many times, especially in the first, the early years. I certainly wasn't
too exhausted.
I wasn't putting any oxygen. I wasn't even taking in air, I don't think. But now, I recognize the need for it, and especially in perimenopause, because my emotions are swinging quite extreme at the moment. I'm in quite an extreme phase of it, and it's been kicking my ass the last couple of weeks. So that thing of like, actually, no, this is my space, my time, and taking it has felt like essential, like a lifeline, really. And I have to do it, otherwise, I feel like I could explode. Yeah. What about you? What's the lessons that you've learned with your peak experience?
So it was more about the whole 2 week experience rather than just that one individual, because like I said, it was like a series of moments. And I'd gone there with the intention of really tuning in and learning something. Um, and what was remarkable for me was, so I was there with a all female leadership team. So um, we basically took 48 young people from the Scouting Association. So they were all 14 to 24-year-olds. And I think there was like a 60-40 split female to male. And I was looking after the 18 to 24-year-olds, so the young adults. And so, although we were a mixed leadership team, the group that was responsible for that age group were all women. And I was the second eldest leader out of all of the leaders, but in our group, I was probably a good 10 years older than the other women. And then we had all these other women who were 20, 21, 22. And I learned so much about how much I've developed over the last 10, 15 years. And I think when you're in your bubble with other people who are all your age, with your friends going through certain life stages, you don't really notice just how much you've come along. And that was the one thing that I started to notice bit by bit. And one of the leaders, she's amazing, but I think she's just turned 40, and she's like Tigger. And she was bouncing around and she needed to be involved in everything. And if there was a conversation going on, she'd bounce over and be involved. Whereas I realised that actually that would have been me 15 years ago. Kind of like the fear of missing out, or your ego needed to be in everything. Whereas this time I actually just stood back and I observed, and I trusted other people would come to me or give me the signals if I was needed. And so I realised how egoless I'd become, which was quite phenomenal because I didn't realise I was ego driven, but clearly I was. But also trusting these 20, 21-year olds, trusting these 30-year-old women to demonstrate when they needed me. And I would only get involved as and when I needed. And then I would only ever give wisdom, or I would ask questions to help them figure things out for themselves. And so all of the learning and development I've done over the last God knows how many years, it kind of really, I was almost like the outlier there because nobody else had been on this journey, and I was able to hold this whole space. Anyway, it came to the after about 10 days, there was a bit of an issue between us leaders, where one of the leaders felt a little bit pushed out, and they were doing the whole stonewalling. And of course, we both noticed what's going on. And the other leader was like, I want to go and talk to them. I want to get involved. What's going on? And I'm just like, look, when she's ready to talk to us, she will. We don't need to go over there. We'll just like bide our time, because I just trust the process. Anyway, the next morning, woke up, we went along with our business, and it did feel crappy just for those few hours. But then the one who'd got the issue, who'd been stonewalling, said, I really need to talk to you both. She said, when you went for dinner yesterday, and you left me behind, I felt really excluded. And interestingly, after my response, the other leader said, wow, the way you handled that was so amazing. And I said, I can't even remember what I said. And apparently what I said was, I hear you. I really understand how you feel. I'm really sorry that we made you feel that way, and we'll be really conscious of that in the future. And she was like, wow, your apology just came so sincerely. I was like, because it was. I don't have any problem saying sorry when an action of mine has hurt somebody. It was never intentional. And anyway, then I got labelled as the wise one, and I got a beautiful little card from the young members, and it just said, "Thank you for your wisdom and your advice." I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, that's So that was my greatest learning, that actually I'm exactly where I always wanted to be. And I'm sure I'll keep learning, but I'm like, I'm here.
I love that. You know what I love about that the most is that, I don't know about you, but I feel like we've grown up in a certain, certainly for me, like doing a lot of self-development work. Some of those groups or training programs were very hard and very harsh. And it's this whole idea of get broken down and then build yourself back up again. I have a problem with some of it now because I look back and I think it was too harsh, it was too brutal. Like, I don't think you need to do it that way. However, it would almost be, if you feel like that, then the problem's on you. And what I love about how you responded was that you just diffused the entire thing. And you didn't make her wrong. You didn't put it back onto her, which would have created more animosity, actually would have probably really taken her down a very bad road. And I think there is something about, as elders, as holders of space, sometimes it's almost like, let's just clear this up really quickly and effectively so that we can get on with the job that we need to do, as opposed to put it back on the person. Yes, there may be some things there that she needs to learn about. There's obviously something going off. There's a story on the inside that triggered for her, but she could do that work later, and there might be another conversation that could be had if she was up for it. But actually, the way you handled it was so kind to her, as opposed to taking her down a dark path. You know what I mean? And then the confusion would have been greater, and then she'd have been in the trauma. Ultimately, she'd have been sat in that trauma, which is not.
Yeah, because the other bouncy lady, she said, I was going to say, no, that's not what happened. And I said, well, that would have just created an argument. I said, because we're all right. We all experienced something,
Yeah.
and there was missing information for all of us. All we needed to do was just acknowledge, yeah, I get that. I see how that would have felt or how that would have looked. And that's most of the time, that's all anybody ever wants, is to be seen and to be heard.
And it's the compassionate way, isn't it? It's the woman's way, and it's the compassionate way, and it's the wise way. So I really, really love that. And I can feel how that would have made a big difference. So well done, you.
And you know what? I think it was all about, a lot of my learning was all about the sisterhood connection as well, because the other group was mixed of male, female leaders leading the group of 14 to 18-year-olds who were obviously very highly emotional and lots going on. But we were three women, and right at the start, we hadn't spent any time together really. I didn't really know these women, and we were sharing a room, and at some points I was sharing a bed. And I said, right, we're going on this journey together. How are we going to be together? And also, how are we going to be when things get hard? So I really designed that alliance right from the get-go. And as a result of us being totally honest and asking for what we needed, understanding each other's boundaries are, what the buttons that get pressed, and respecting that, actually what then happened was that it then created a solid space for the younger people, and they then started acting in the same way. And we were expecting there to be a lot of conflict and a lot of issues with this group. There were none.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, it was just pure joy, and the support and compassion and care everybody demonstrated absolutely came from our sisterhood joining together and agreeing, we're going to be kind, we're going to be honest, we're going to be truthful, we're going to be patient. And that sisterhood element, I don't think I've ever really experienced it before, but I did it by design. Not like we are going to create a sisterhood, but I wanted to design a different way to lead, and it was phenomenal. So yeah, that was kind of like my sisterhood connection.
I love that. I love it. It's making me think a lot really about I don't like to say the right or the wrong ways, because that feels too like school teachery, but yeah, I do feel like in so many ways we've been trained, like to go after things, to fix it. I think that's the word I'm getting. Like, if we fix things, then it's okay. But actually, we don't need to fix. We don't need to tidy everything up. There's something about just being with and holding space and, allowing things to unfold, as opposed to when we get into the fixing, it's almost like stop. I keep seeing lots of things at the moment with water, and you've got this big patch of water, and it came up in a coaching session with a client the other day, and it's like there's this huge river that's running through, and then we put a big dam down it and we block the flow of the water, and that has a detrimental effect obviously on environments and culture and the spaces where people live. And it's like that when we go in and we're like, well, let's fix that, let's cut it off before it can sort of grow anymore. And actually, I think in some ways we actually create more harm than we do good, as opposed to just acknowledging and being with and saying, you know, like, not taking full responsibility for everything ourselves, but there is something around that. The apology is always a good one, I think, you know, for the impact that we have, even if it's unintentional. So I love what you're saying here. And the sisterhood connection for me, it's like, you know, when we think about working together and collaborating and being connected to each other, it isn't fixing. There might be some problem solving going on, because we do like to sort of have a conversation, but actually the biggest part of the conversation is to be heard, you know, and I understood the big word, isn't it? But like, if someone's like listening to you and saying, you know, I understand how that could have happened, it almost like the rest of the conversation, it's not that important anymore, because you've got what you wanted.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
It takes all the heat out of it. And the fact is, none of us have ever been in this situation with these people. You know, obviously I went on a trip with people I didn't know into a place I've never known. But even when you're in your own lives, whether it's, you know, meeting at the schoolyard, going into the office, you've never been in that situation before, and neither of those other people. So you can't go around fixing things because you don't actually know what the best way to fix things are. So all you can do is collaborate and figure things out as you go along. And I guess that's my biggest learning from all of this. You know, you've got to almost cultivate and evolve rather than, like you say, put a dam in it and just stop things. Because when you put a stop on things, there's unfinished business that smoulders and it bubbles, and eventually it will become that volcano. Something will have to knock that dam down in some way because of that unfinished business. Whereas when you just listen to somebody, often it's done. They don't need any more words. They've processed it.
Well, also you get, you know, in the gift to that person is that they get probably what they were going for, which is to be understood and to be included and to be cared for. So whether somebody didn't give that to that person, but then by you stepping into that space, you're giving that, so they get to go, oh, this does exist. I am good enough to receive it. It's happening to me right now. You know, it's almost like the pattern could be shifted for that person in such a simple way, you know, without getting into the drama of it, so that they have a different lived experience. And hopefully that's the change, you know, because when people do things like, it's almost like, you know, when we meet these like earth angels that are in the world, and sometimes they are complete strangers who just step in that moment, you know, and do say something kind, or do something kind, or help you when you're discombobulated or something like that. You know, when we have those experiences and the kindness comes through, it breaks the pattern that we're in. And then, you know, we might not know that person, but then afterwards you think, that person really helped me. I don't even know their name, but that person really helped me. And, you know, that for me is definitely around sisterhood. I know men do it too, but it's men who step into maybe the feminine. I had that experience again. I'm going back to childbirth here, but when I was pregnant, and I've shared this story before, but when I was in Delhi and I was bleeding, you know, and I was in a very, very difficult situation, the nurses and the doctors were all women in the hospital. And I got some of the best advice from them. But not only that, there were nurses in there who were really quite harsh with me. And I used my leadership skills and said to, you know, the people in charge, I don't want those nurses. I don't want them coming in the room. But there were other nurses who were really kind and really caring. And, you know, I was a stranger in a strange place, scared about losing, you know, my child. I think I was 12 weeks pregnant at the time. And I was in hospital for a week. So, you know, I had a lot of different people coming in and out. And I became very clear about the energy that I wanted around me. And there were these nurses and, like, again, the doctors coming in who just gave me things like, you know, try not to get, I mean, this is a hard one, but they were like, you have to be strong. Don't get too upset. Don't get too emotional about this. Your baby needs you, you know. So at that point, I was like, whatever I'm feeling, the fear I'm fearing, my baby inside my belly, my womb, is also feeling it. So I have a responsibility now to do everything I can to stay calm. So I'm like meditating, I'm praying, I'm doing all these things. But it was through like the support network of strangers, you know, who were caring for me, that I was able to channel the right energy really ultimately. And I've never forgotten, I can see their faces, so I can see the nurse. I'm actually friends with one of them on Facebook. And she's also gone off to have a baby, and every now and then she pops up, and what a wonderful thing. Like that nurse, and I actually sent her a gift afterwards when I got back to London. I got her address and I sent her a gift saying thank you, because she made such a difference to me. Because I was scared, and we need those strong women, the strong advice sometimes as well of someone who is not going through the experience or the trauma, but who is like holding space and who can say, hey, don't go down that path. That's not going to help right now. It was certainly something that I've took away from me, and that idea of what we feel and how it gets transported and how other people feel it, whether they're in your womb or around you. We are constantly passing along our experiences and really sort of like shifting things quickly and just thinking, don't go there. Think of the people around you. So that was a really, really, really big one for me.
It sounds a little bit like a legacy piece. It's like something that stayed with you and informed your future. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. And I think when I come back to the legacy, I remember that Catalina is a strong, determined, like she is, and she is that. She's a force of nature. She was conceived during, complex times for me. It was late on in life. She grew to be a healthy, baby. She survived. The fact that she survived what happened in Delhi and she lived on is a miracle. And everyone said to me, you might lose you, because all the doctors were like, look, you might lose her. So I always had that fear inside, but look at her now. She's 6, she's bouncing, she's full of life. And I just have to think, hold on a minute, when I get into my sort of like fear states around losing her, because I still have that story running, I go, hold on a minute. She is strong, she's determined. I'm gonna cry. She was gonna be born. And I did everything I could to support that, clearly, but she was there was no way she wasn't coming through. And I have to remind myself of that and trust that she's on her journey, and it's a big journey for her and it's a big journey for me. And my job is to just stay calm, within myself and not get into, the fear program and the story. So yeah, we all have these big journeys. And I think when we get into the fear and the worry, we forget the big picture. We forget that there is this journey that we can't see it. We can't see it. We can feel things. We might have a vision for something, but we don't really know. So we have the level of trust that we need to keep connecting and keep listening to our instincts is beyond, and she's a living example of that for me. Gosh.
I've seen it, I'm witnessing it, I'm feeling it.
Oh, it always gets me, this one, but yeah. And for me, it's like being reminded about the power and strength of life is the thing that makes me cry, because it's like my heart just goes, now I'm like, it's totally expanded out, and I can talk about the hard stuff till the cows come home and don't really cry about that so much, but the beauty and the wonder and the magic just sends me into a whole different thing, because it's like, this is where I want to be, yeah. Talk to me about your legacy.
Mine is on the same kind of vein, really, but stood in front of that volcano and understanding the force that could come out of that at any second. It could just erupt. It was already active. And then just seeing this ecosystem around me and the people that I was sharing it with, it made me humble in the fact that I am just another animal living on this planet, just coexisting. It's not that important. It's not, every time we think about the small stuff, and we're like, it's not that important. Will this matter a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? And most of the stuff we worry about now won't matter. So that was like that really humbling, bigger picture kind of thing. And then the other side of the legacy piece was actually how you live your life, or the quality of the relationships that you have are intentional. And so all of those interactions that I had with all of those people were determined on how I chose to approach it. I could have gone in with fixing or being the boss or making it all about me or getting into drama, but actually I just chose to be united, aligned, in the moment and present, aware. And actually that had a ripple effect on everybody else around me. And so I invite the chaos in that I invite, or I choose the calm and the balance. And so that was a real humbling but powerful legacy for me. And I knew this stuff already. It was just a great reminder that I'm not that important. I'm only on the planet for 80, 90 years if I'm lucky. But equally, everything that I create in my world is down to me and my impact and my thoughts, my own healing, my own triggers, and taking responsibility for that. And that was really empowering. So, and that's the gift I want to give to everybody, actually. You are the master of your own destiny, and you can turn any situation into a magic or an amazing learning opportunity for growth. And it may feel hard right now, but what's on the other side of the rainbow is pretty phenomenal.
I'm going to add into that as well in terms of, advice. Try not to judge things as good. Fundamentally, I'm going to put the word fundamentally in there, because we can have experiences and then, we go think, well, that was a really bad experience. That was a really negative. Let's use the word negative experience. However, was it fundamentally negative? And fundamentally changes everything for me, because when I think about things, I go, oh, that was awful. It was the worst experience. However, look what came out of it. Look at how it changed me. Look at how I grew. Look at how I use my voice to say, I don't want that. I do want that. That person, yes. That person, no. Look how I took charge of scenarios. Look how strong I became. I became a true mother, in that hospital, as I was sort of fighting for her life. I'm fighting for my life in a way, because but I've lost her. I don't know where I would have gone with that one. So it's try not to go down the bad, good, fundamental. Use the fundamental word and open up the space for yourself. Look for the meanings. Look for what it's bringing into your life. Look for the change that's happening on the inside if you say yes to it, and go for the lessons and the growth is what I would say. Yeah.
That's a beautiful place to end our conversation. I want to thank you for indulging me and letting me speak about some of my peak experiences, and also for thanking you for sharing yours. And for everybody listening, please do just take time to revisit those peak experiences, unlock the lessons, the gifts that they gave you, and find a way to find moments of joy every single day, because they are there. We just need to turn our attention to them. So have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week, and we'll hear you again next week.
So thanks for listening, and we can't wait to welcome you next time.
Until then, use your voice, journal, speak or sing out loud. However you do it, we hope you join us in
Saying It Sister.